We have here a loaf of bread. And I'm sure this is pretty healthy bread here. It's a 100% whole wheat bread. And for me, the big test is it even smells good. So if I have to stop and make a sandwich out of this bread in the middle of this homily, well, you can understand why. Well, Jesus uses bread and hungry people to teach his disciples and to teach us an important lesson in the gospel. He tells us that with the power of our faith in Christ, we can do what seems impossible. With the power of our faith in Christ, we can make the impossible possible. Now, Jesus went up on a mountain with his disciples, and a whole crowd followed him because they'd seen the miracles that he had done. So when he looked up, saw the crowd, he said to his disciples, "Well, give the people something to eat. They must be very hungry coming all this way out in this deserted place." Did you notice he did this to test their faith in him? Did it to test their faith. Well, all the disciples could say was, "Well, gee, there's a boy here who has 5 of these loaves of bread and a couple of fish, but that isn't going to feed 5,000 people. It's impossible." Then Jesus, remember the story, he just tells the people, have them lie down on the grass, and then he took the bread and the fish, and he gave thanks, he blessed it, and told them to distribute it to the people. And everybody had enough. And there was more left over than they could possibly eat. When the people saw this, they were truly amazed, and they said, "This is indeed the prophet who is to come into the land." Now, notice how Jesus challenges the apostles. He said, "You have the power to feed the hungry. You have what you need to feed the hungry." And with the power of their faith in Christ, they were able to feed all those people. And that's a lesson. You see, the apostles, they were a lot like we are at times, huh? They were stuck with what they didn't have. They were stuck with what they didn't have. Hey, look, we got 5 loaves of bread and a couple of fish. It ain't going to happen. We can't feed all these people. And Jesus tells them, yes, you can. You have the power within you. And that's a lesson to us. The power of our faith in Christ. And the apostles, that day the apostles discovered with the power of their faith in Christ, they were able to do the impossible. Feed all those people. And that's the lesson for us. In our own lives, with the power of our faith in Christ, we too are able to do what seems impossible. And all Jesus was asking is that they put their faith in him. It's all he asked the apostles, and that's what he asks of us this morning, each one of us. Put your faith in me. you can do what seems impossible in your life. Well, this weekend, we began the Summer Olympics in London. And I'm sure that probably most of us at one time or another will watch some of the games. I know I did last night, and I was just amazed at how they could do that. Just amazed. And yet we know that you don't just walk into the Olympics. It takes years of practice and conditioning. And one young man that won the swimming from Rochester, New York, said, this is the result of 4 years of hard work. I'm able to do it. I knew that I could. And I'm sure that many of the athletes there maybe never expected, never thought it was possible that they would be in the Olympics. Impossible. And yet they were there. They're there now. And I am pretty sure that a good many of them maybe got discouraged at times and maybe thought they couldn't do it. Were tempted to just plain give up. This is impossible. Yet somehow they found the strength to keep going. Something inside them. And this is much like what Jesus is teaching the apostles. The power of their faith in Christ can make the impossible possible. And sometimes we see that power of our faith in unusual ways right around us. Recently, a friend of mine died of cancer. And when she was diagnosed some years ago, she said to her family, she said, "Yes, I have cancer, a deadly kind of cancer. Yes, I have cancer, but cancer doesn't have me. I have cancer, but cancer doesn't have me." And with that, she kept on going. She worked at her job right up until the last year of her life. And right up until her very last days, she was continually helping her family, her friends, and her community in any way she could. I remember in the last real conversation I had with her, she said, "Now, how's everything going? What's going on? How's summer going down in the neighborhood? How's the program going?" She cared about others to the end. And I'm sure, in her case, that it was her faith in God, her faith in the power of Christ, that kept her going and caring. And shortly before her death, her family and her friends established a fund to aid cancer research, so that this form of cancer could be detected earlier in women and treatment begun. And maybe that's just another way of God making the impossible possible. So this morning, let's simply stop and take a look at our own lives. Now, what looks impossible in our lives? We want to look deep inside us. We want to look at what seems to overpower us. So maybe it's a weakness of one kind or another, the temptation to sin. Could even be an addiction of some kind. Maybe an illness. It seems impossible to overcome. Maybe it's a relationship. No matter how hard we try, we just can't seem to repair that relationship. So let's stop for just a minute now. We'll just take part of a minute and look deep now, deep into our own hearts. And remember now what Jesus was telling the apostles and telling us. Put your faith in me. That's what I ask of you. So as we continue on this morning then and prepare ourselves to share in the body and the blood of Christ, let's ask our God to increase our faith. Ask our God to increase our faith, that what looks impossible to us might indeed be possible with our faith in Christ.